Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cellular Wisdom, the podcast where we explore the science of peak health and performance, one cell at a time. I'm Ethan Foster, your friendly neighborhood observer of the human condition. And as always, I'm joined by the brilliant and quick-witted Alara Sky.
Brilliant and quick-witted. You're too kind, Ethan. Although now the pressure is on to deliver some actual brilliance while being quick and witty. I'm fully prepared to accept this challenge.
We can't let the audience down. After all, we promised them a fresh and somewhat entertaining take on health information, right?
Right. There's enough drab, jargon-heavy content out there. Our aim is to keep the conversation lively, comedic, and if possible, extremely useful. Today, we're diving into a fascinating topic inspired by Dr. Mercola's piece on creatine and its impact on the brain. We'll call this episode Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. Prepare to have your mind, and perhaps your muscles, properly energized.
I love it. Now, some folks already associate creatine with burly bodybuilders hoisting heavy barbells in a gym. But Dr. Mercola highlights that creatine isn't just for bulking up. It's also found naturally in grass-fed meats, and crucially, it plays a role in brain function.
Right, and that's the big surprise for a lot of people. It's not only about bench presses and squat racks. Creatine can actually help your neurons power through a tough mental task, sort of like fueling a mental set of bicep curls when you're trying to memorize the lyrics to a complicated song or you're cramming for an exam.
You just gave me an unfortunate flashback to my college days. I used to attempt late-night study sessions that ended with me half asleep and drooling onto a textbook. Perhaps if I'd known about creatine back then, my drool-free study sessions would have been a smashing success.
It's entirely possible. According to Dr. Mercola, creatine is crucial for generating ATP, that all-important molecule that keeps your cells energized. While the body can produce creatine, it often doesn't make enough to meet higher demands, especially if you're into high-intensity mental or physical activities. And if you don't eat animal-based foods, your creatine stores may be even lower.
So basically, if someone is vegan or a vegetarian, they might want to be extra mindful about their creatine status if they're doing advanced calculus or pulling all-nighters.
Exactly. Or if they're composing a complicated symphony or maybe just trying to keep track of 20 different TV streaming subscriptions. Life can get cognitively intense these days, you know? So having a strong brain energy buffer can help.
That's an interesting phrase, brain energy buffer. From what I gather, creatine helps the brain quickly regenerate ATP. So in those moments when your mental engine is revving, like you're tackling a tough puzzle, or you're a shift worker burning the midnight oil, creatine steps in and says, "No worries, I've got extra fuel for you."
That's pretty much the idea. Studies have shown that adding creatine can lead to better memory recall, more stable mental energy, and less fatigue. If your poor neurons are screaming, "We're hungry," then creatine can help feed them what they need to keep going.
Dr. Mercola mentioned a narrative review in sports medicine. It seems a significant chunk of research focuses on creatine's effect beyond muscles, like how it helps older adults with memory, how it might reduce the burden of traumatic brain injuries in children, and even how it interacts with issues like depression or anxiety.
Yes, the big takeaway is that people who are already running on low energy, like older adults, kids recovering from concussions, or folks dealing with sleep deprivation, are more likely to see beneficial changes. Because if you're already fully charged, extra creatine doesn't do much. It's like trying to top off a car's gas tank when it's already at capacity.
In other words, if someone's brain is humming along at 100%, creatine might just be a sidekick without much to do. But if you're a bit under 100%, maybe 60 or 70, then creatine steps in to bring you up a few notches.
Exactly. A study in Scientific Reports found that a single large dose of creatine helped sleep-deprived individuals stay alert and maintain better memory. Imagine you're up all night finishing a novel that's due to the publisher at 8 a.m. If you time your creatine dose right, you might still be coherent come sunrise, as opposed to speaking in half-finished sentences.
Ah yes, the dreaded half-sentence phenomenon, also known as sleepy toddler syndrome. If this approach helps with those 3 a.m. blinking sessions, that's major. But the paper indicated something about timing, that the best effect kicked in a few hours after the dose, right?
They found that about 3 to 4 hours after taking creatine, individuals experienced better memory performance and felt less fatigued. So if you have a big exam at 10 a.m., but you pulled an all-nighter, you might want to plan your strategy accordingly.
Now I'm picturing someone setting their alarm for 5 a.m. after 0 hours of sleep, popping a dose of creatine and chanting, "Show me the brain power." That's quite the image.
Could be effective, albeit a tad chaotic. Anyway, the notion is that creatine's immediate presence in your system can help buffer that mental slump, though it's absolutely no substitute for actual sleep. This is more of an emergency measure than a blueprint for everyday living.
Totally. Sleep is still the king of brain health. This is just a useful tool when you can't get enough rest or when you're taxing your mind for some reason. One part that caught my attention. Researchers noticed that in certain cases the brain just soaks up creatine more quickly if you're in a sleep-deprived or energy-depleted state.
Yes, like how a parched sponge soaks up water extra fast. If your brain is desperate for energy, it welcomes those extra phosphate molecules with open arms. But if your brain is feeling spry and energetic, it might be like, Creatine, thanks for showing up, but I'm good right now.
Makes sense. Let's circle back to dietary sources for a minute. Dr. Mercola emphasizes that grass-fed meats are a top-notch supply of creatine. He also reminds us that high-quality foods in general lay a strong foundation for energy. But he warns that if you rely on processed meats or poor-quality animal products, you're not necessarily doing your body any favors.
Right. Consuming fresh, grass-fed meat is an excellent way to get natural creatine. If you prefer fish, salmon, and tuna are also decent. But again, if you're all plant-based, your creatine stores could be low. That doesn't mean you have to give up your dietary preferences. But if you're pushing mental or physical limits, a supplement might fill the gap.
Also, Dr. Mercola's analysis mentions that if you decide to supplement, the typical sweet spot is around 3 to 5 grams of creatine monohydrate a day. Some people do loading phases, but that can lead to water retention or discomfort. Plus, hydration is crucial, right?
Absolutely. Creatine draws water into your cells. So if you're not drinking enough fluids, your body might stage a minor revolt. But if you stay on top of your water intake, everything typically runs smoothly.
I find it fascinating that it could benefit not only short-term mental clarity, but also older adults dealing with memory lapses. Dr. Mercola's piece cited research in older populations that noticed improvements in recall tasks. That's pretty significant.
Huge, because if you think about how many people start feeling those memory glitches as they age, having an accessible, simple tool to boost brain energy is a game changer. Combine that with good sleep, stress management, and a generally healthy lifestyle, and you're giving your brain a robust safety net.
I recall reading that children recovering from traumatic brain injuries saw fewer headaches and shorter hospital stays when they supplemented with creatine in decent quantities. That's another dimension that's often overlooked.
Yep, 0.4 grams per kilogram of body weight per day for kids dealing with head injuries was mentioned in the studies. That's obviously a higher dose than your typical daily maintenance, but the context there was specific medical conditions, like moderate to severe TBI. The important takeaway is how creatine helped speed up recovery of language skills and reduce headaches.
Now, not all groups saw the same effects. For instance, in certain neurodegenerative diseases, the results were less encouraging. That's probably due to the complexity of those conditions.
Right. It's not a cure-all. In diseases like ALS or Parkinson's, the data weren't strong enough to call creatine a major intervention. But for everyday life, or for certain acute situations where your brain needs extra help, the data are pretty compelling.
So, if we had to break down a quick checklist of how to maximize your mental stamina based on Dr. Mercola's discussion, it might look like this. 1. Prioritize sleep and manage stress first. 2. Incorporate grass-fed meats or fish into your diet if that aligns with your preference. 3. If you still feel drained, consider a creatine supplement at a moderate dosage. 4. Stay hydrated. And 5. Time it strategically if you expect mental heavy lifting.
Exactly. And let's not forget, you don't want to rely on creatine as an excuse to skimp on good food or adequate rest. It's more like a bonus round for your brain.
Well said. Given our busy modern lifestyles, it's nice to know there's something that can help with mental clarity without giving you the jitters of those triple-shot espressos.
Indeed, with creatine, you won't be vibrating in your seat. You're just fortifying the good old energy molecules in your neurons.
That's a relief. Now, what do you think about side effects or cautionary tales? The one that stands out to me is the emphasis on hydration. I suppose if someone dramatically increases creatine intake, they should keep track of how they feel.
Yes, definitely. And there's also a potential kidney strain if you go too high, but that's typically if you're taking enormous, possibly ill-advised amounts. The typical recommended doses are quite safe for most people. It's always wise to pay attention to your body's signals.
Dr. Mercola also noted that if you're fully energized to begin with, you may not see a massive difference in everyday tasks. It really shines in bridging an energy gap. So maybe if your energy is fine, keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, no need to fix what isn't broken. But if you're pushing to the next level, or your schedule demands superhuman brain power for short stretches, creatine might be the sidekick you didn't know you needed.
That's a good summary. It's like having an assistant on speed dial. You might never call them if you're cruising along just fine, but you're sure happy to have their number if you get swamped.
Exactly. And I appreciate that it aligns with a natural approach. Get your fundamentals in order first. Balanced diet, good sleep. And then, if you require more, creatine can be a practical addition, especially from good quality, well-researched sources.
When we talk about quality, Dr. Mercola pointed out that not all supplements are created equal. Some might have additives or be made in less than stellar facilities. So it's best to do a little homework.
Yes, definitely read labels. It's easy to assume all creatine is the same, but that's not always true. A reputable brand ensures you're not ingesting mystery fillers. If you're going to give your brain and muscles a treat, make sure it's not spiked with random extras.
So, what's our big parting wisdom on this topic, Alara? If we were to distill Dr. Mercola's insights into a final takeaway, how would you phrase it?
Maybe something like, creatine is more than just a muscle booster. It's an energy guardian for your brain, ready to step in when life demands you stay sharp under challenging conditions. Combine it with nutrient-rich foods, proper rest, and a mindful approach to supplementation, and you've got yourself a potential edge in keeping your mind resilient and alert.
That's a solid encapsulation. I guess the next question is, how do we ensure we're not missing anything else in this wide world of brain-boosting possibilities?
We keep exploring, reading studies, and, of course, coming back here to cellular wisdom to share more comedic, evidence-based banter with our lovely listeners. We can't solve all health mysteries in one episode, so we'll just make sure to keep them on the edge of their seats for the next one.
Oh, absolutely. And to everyone who tuned in expecting a mild conversation about bicep curls, surprise. You got a whole lot more than you bargained for. We appreciate you joining us on this wild ride through the wonders of creatine and brain chemistry.
Wild rides and sharp minds, that's our motto. Before we wrap, let's remind everyone that knowledge is powerful, but so is critical thinking. Dive into the research and see if something like creatine might enhance your mental or physical performance. And if you choose to, monitor how you feel.
Absolutely. Just as Dr. Mercola emphasizes, our bodies are amazing machines. The more we understand how they work at a cellular level, the better prepared we are to maintain them, and maybe even boost them when life gets busy.
Yes. So, folks, keep fueling those ATP reserves with a balanced diet, stay hydrated, sleep well, and call upon creatine if you need that extra mental or physical push. Think of it as your loyal cellular sidekick. It won't don a cape and save you from poor life choices, but it can give your neurons a well-timed nudge.
I love the superhero metaphor. That's all for today's episode of Cellular Wisdom. I'm Ethan Foster, signing off with a final note. Remember, if your brain is in dire need of a pick-me-up, there are more options than chugging your 5th cup of coffee.
And I'm Alara Sky, encouraging you to take care of your mind and body. After all, they're on the same team. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another enlightening, hopefully humorous exploration of what keeps us ticking.
Until next time, stay curious, stay energized, and don't forget, health is wealth, right down to every last cell.
Amen to that. Bye, everyone.